Welcome to the Scared So What podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Grant Van Ulbrich. This is the show where we break through the fear of change and ask the question, scared? So what? Each week we dive into personal change management, coaching, and leadership for the future, giving you real-world tools, insights, and stories to help you lead yourself and others through transformation. Whether you're navigating change in your life, your career, or your organization, this is your space to learn, to grow, and to take bold action. So, are you ready? Let's move from fear to forward. Welcome to the Scared So What podcast show. Today, I'm excited to have a very special guest who is a storytelling Jedi with 25 years in tech and a TEDx talk under his belt. And he's even had 2 Ironman finishes behind him with the scars to prove it. So he says, I haven't seen them, but we'll find out. He's the guy who turns complex tech stories into that sell and the reason why your last demo didn't suck. Yeah, I said that. So when your story finally lands and the light bulb goes off, don't thank him. Just say, I blame Doug. Welcome to the show, Doug. How are you?
Thanks a lot, Grant. No, it's such an introduction. It's really cool. And the Ironman, I got proof behind me. I got the finishers posters back there.
I can see that as well, too.
Oh,
You do have that.
I won't show you the scars. They're sort of ugly.
I was going to say, we'll have to take you at your word for the scars, but
Yeah.
there you go. But I love that. And the reason why your last demo didn't suck. We actually have to talk about that and find out a little bit more about that.
Absolutely.
But Doug, tell us a little bit where you're from. So Doug Thompson, where are we talking to you from today?
So I'm a Texan, and I take that with me everywhere. I worked 20 years at Microsoft before I came here to Tanium 4.5 years ago. So I'm still in tech, I'm a sales nerd by heart. Love storytelling. I went to a brief story. I went to a high school reunion. I won't tell you how many decades that was.
Just two.
But there had some memorabilia that from our class, and there was this note. This is way back before the digital age. It was a tardy slip, and it said, it was in my handwriting, which really has not gotten any better than since then. It said, I was late today because I got behind a Coke truck, Coca-Cola truck, and it dropped its load on the freeway. And it was approved. So I was a storyteller even well back then.
What an excuse.
It wouldn't work today and with all the social media and X or what have you, but at the time, I leveraged it and I sold it.
Oh, that is hilarious. I remember those tardy slips, but I was never as creative as that. A Coke truck.
I can either confirm or deny that actually happened, but
exactly. It used to be just the dog ate your homework, but that's very creative. So you've been doing a lot, Doug. I mean, you're an author, you're a TEDx speaker, you have your own podcast show, and so much more. Tell us a little bit about what's going on in your world.
Sure. By day, I am, again, a tech salesperson and working for that. We do endpoint security, so I'm explaining technology. What's interesting is through the journey is the audience or the buyer has changed. So back when I started at Microsoft, it was a time where, hey, Intel's got a new processor, new memory speed, Microsoft's got a new operating system, and that sold itself, and you were talking to fellow nerds. So the conversation there was always speeds and feeds. Now, as you move into SaaS, the budget now has moved outside of IT. The budget now is with the CMO or with the CFO or these other places that really don't care about the technology, don't speak it, don't really care about it. They just have problems they need to get solved. So I had to evolve how I talked about things. And that's where the storytelling really came in, because if you don't understand, technology, like you could tell me stuff about the cruise industry and stuff, which I haven't been on a cruise and I wouldn't really totally understand it. So you'd use a story to relate that to something that I am familiar with. And that way I connect with them. And that's the way it sort of evolved over time. And I'm on a mission now to sort of help those that are behind me on this road to mastery, and give them the ability to tell stories. Because I working for these tech companies, I talk to a lot of really smart people, and you make a joke about these are the type of people that you keep behind a closed door and don't show to customers, and they have their own conversations. They're really bright, and nobody's ever taught them how to go ahead and tell a story and how to relate to other people. And the technology today and school today doesn't really encourage that. It's sort of a gap. When I grew up, we had one phone in the house, a 20-foot phone cord if you were lucky, so you can get away from your parents.
Yes. Usually from the kitchen. Orange or blue.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly. So thing. So that's we talked, and that's I said I'm going to mission to help fix that problem.
And I love that. I was like, it's so important too. Think of these people, technology experts, etc. They're inventing the way forward for the world. You would
Hmm.
think that they have amazing stories to tell, and experiences to share with each other. And I would
Hmm.
think that, some of the best sales technology platforms out there would actually use that as a strength from their sales
Yeah.
teams themselves to actually
Hmm.
say, look at our people who are building all of this, bring us into that type
Yeah.
of a world.
It's odd because it's almost somewhat like an exclusive skill set where you have the ability to tell stories and stuff, or you're just really brilliant digging down, doing AI and all these other things.
Mhm.
And but again, it's because they haven't taught it. I was a mentor to the Masters of Science program, the master program out here at University of Texas for
Mhm.
ITSM, Information Technology Management. And as I'm looking at the resumes of everybody coming in, we did mock interviews. I'm like, I got to look up every third word. I don't know what half the stuff they're
Yeah,
talking
yeah. What
about.
is this about?
And but I said, hey, look, why should I hire you? And they would start reading the resume, and I said, no, 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 that's not what I asked. I said, why should I hire you? Out of everybody, I could hire anybody here
Yeah,
and not get fired because you're all brilliant. You're all you're all smarter than I am. But why you, of amongst all the others, should I tell the story? And they couldn't tell their own story. So if you can't tell your own story, and much like this, then you don't really stand a chance of learning how to tell other stories. So I'm trying to put people in touch with their own story.
yeah. Because that makes sense. If they can only speak the narrative of the language of what they're doing to like-minded people, then
Hmm.
they're missing out on so many other worldly opportunities, I would think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And in your
Is
family, how do you explain what you do to your family?
Well,
Most of them don't.
exactly. I connect the semiconductor here and there. Yeah, well, that's great. Thanks. Can you find me the light switch? Does it work? You have your TEDx talk as well too.
Yeah.
Congratulations on that.
Thank you.
And can you tell us a little bit more about what is in the context of the messaging there?
Yeah, it was sort of a journey of myself. So, that's one of those things, be careful what you ask for because you may actually get it. So I applied for one as a speaker. That's sort of like one of those things that you always do.
Oh
And
yeah.
I applied for it, then I got it, and I'm like, crap, what am I really going to talk about? Because I had an
Right?
idea.
Were
It was
you that's a change for you. You were a little
yeah.
surprised.
Yeah, it was about storytelling, but I didn't hadn't really fleshed it out. And so in doing research, I learned a lot of brain science about why we're wired for story, to borrow the Lisa Cron's title of her book, talks
Mhm.
about that. So I learned a lot of brains. And as I'm going through this process, I learned a lot about myself. And so as I'm crafting these stories and getting back to your inner story, I've discovered my inner, what I call my inner bully. I call him Simon.
Okay. You named
And
him.
I've named him, yeah, and he's actually sort of like, you would be familiar with him from he wears t-shirts a lot, has a British accent, and likes to insult people. But
Okay.
you know who I'm talking about.
I probably see him, yes. Right here on the
Simon.
streets.
Yeah, Mr. Simon. But
Hmm.
yeah, I just put a name on him, and your subconscious tells you these things that you wouldn't tell your worst enemy.
Yeah,
You're
it's true.
harder on yourself. You can't do this or you can't do that, and that came up a lot when I was developing this talk. Who am I to get on this TEDx stage and talk about this? I don't have a
Yeah.
PhD. I don't have these other things on there. All these different reasons why your inner bully goes into talk to you, and is really there to protect you.
Yeah.
It just hasn't developed. That's its role, protect you from harm. We don't run from dinosaurs anymore, so it doesn't have much to do. So it makes up stuff,
Yeah.
and it talks to you all the time. Whether you know it or not. So that's where what you'll find about it is I talk about that to try to get people to say, encourage them, try something different. Don't listen to that voice in your head. I asked Simon now. He still shows up from time to time. He's like that, second relative you want to remove. Still shows up from time to time, but now I can recognize when he started coming to the door.
Yeah.
And my favorite thing is just, we'll prove it. Where's your receipts? Where's your receipts
Yeah.
that I can't do this?
Hmm.
And amazingly, he can't come up with any, or they're pretty
Well,
lame.
it's so true, and you know what? Maybe I
Hmm.
wonder if it's a sign of as we age and as we mature
Hmm.
and grow, do we just kind of run out of excuses and we find ourselves in the place of, well, maybe I can.
Yeah, I think if you're aware of that,
Hmm.
if you're, 'cause I see too many people still even that are still locked into that. They can't do that, and they've lived their life in that
Yeah.
very small box, or
Yeah.
the small town that they grew up in, because that's where they feel safe, and the inner bullies quieted down.
Hmm.
But yeah, I think you do get some wisdom as you go along if you're paying attention. If you're
So
wanting to
true.
keep growing and understanding, well, why? At some point in time, you'd say, well, why can't I do this? You would hope to that
Yeah.
you see people around you doing different things. Why can't that be me? Ask that. And we always like to say, well, what's the worst that could happen? I still focus on that a lot. I come up at 3 o'clock in the morning, all these, dire straits where it's like 24 hours and, I'm what's his name? Kiefer Sutherland trying to run down in 24 hours, stop the terrorist. And
Exactly.
in reality, if you say, well, what's the best that can happen? And it's a gratitude thing. I've learned gratitude over my life that if I start off the day with some meditation, some gratitude, I'm in much
Yeah.
better frame of mind to go have a positive day.
I love that. You're the second person. I just had an amazing lady on the show, Tara LaFon-Gooch, and
Oh, yeah.
she is a TEDx speaker as well too. I don't know if you've
Mhm.
heard of her, but phenomenal. And
Yeah.
her whole mantra, you're shaking your head, yes, so you must know her. Gratitude. Her
Yeah.
book, her talk, her whole was about that. I had never heard that before. You're the second
Yeah.
person in my life that has actually said, let's flip the script, so to speak, and stop, saying what's the worst that can happen, and say, how do we actually start from gratitude? Can you
Yeah.
tell me just a little bit more about that? What that means
Yeah.
to you?
Some of it comes back down to the inner bully talking to me and stuff on that. It's like, or like TEDx. I don't have a story to tell. That's Simon's favorite line. Because I haven't had this near death experience. If you look at all these books and his bestsellers of the blind guy that climbed Mount Everest or these other challenges and stuff that you see every day and you're inspired by,
Hmm.
and we say, well, I don't have any of those things. I'm fairly normal from what I've had. I've had a good career. I've done these other
You're
things.
lucky.
I got a fairly normal family as things go. I mean, there is no normal family. I think the normal family is
Yeah.
dysfunction. But in finding there, it's not about what your past does. It's the story you have to tell that can help other people. And if you
Yeah.
think about that if you go back to biblical times and all, where Jesus, the stories he tells were always parables, and he was a servant with that. And I look to sort of do that. If I think about other people first and gratitude, because I've been very fortunate. I'm very grateful for that.
Mm.
And if I bring that forward, it opens up so many different. It's a positive energy thing. I can't explain other than that. Is that put your mind to look for opportunities to be grateful and to do good things, as
Yeah.
opposed to looking for reasons and stuff. Either way you look at it, I get out of bed in the morning. I'm going to say I'm going to have a good day or a bad day, and pretty much that's the way it's going to go. Because I'll start
Yeah.
looking for things to validate my thought for the day. Well, it's a bad day, and everything that comes up.
Yeah.
Well, the computer needed a reboot. Blah blah blah. So
Hmm.
you just look for those things that reinforce it. So I've just found, through that, through always trying to improve myself, that way I have a lot better outcomes. So
I
self
like that. That's
experiment.
Yeah, and it's so empowering as well too. So I've got 2 points there, and I wonder how this shapes up. So you've got gratitude, but you also have storytelling. How do you weave both of those into your leadership style? And what do you believe to be your way of practice?
Yeah, my stories tend to be a little bit more of the optimistic outcome type thing. Or great, look,
Hmm.
we've done these other things. I will throw in in sales, you'll get a lot of these things where we've always done it that way,
Hmm.
and you have to throw in a little bit. Again, any good story has tension. You have an arc. You have the traditional story arc where here's the hero, and they go through struggles and struggles until they finally overcome it, and you go
Yeah,
from here. So what I try to paint in some of those scenarios is that, hey, look, if you don't change, what's the future look like? Let's look at some other examples of stuff,
exactly. Yeah.
right? And then from that standpoint, I can show, okay, here's the outcome that comes from this. I've always been sort of a blue sky
Hmm.
type person where I see the goal, be it a 5 year goal, whatever, off in the distance. And
Yeah.
I'll equate this to sailing. In that, if you've ever said, if you got the wind behind you, it's a straight shot, you're just going, everything's great.
Yeah.
But if I've got to get back to that point, I'm going to be going against the wind. How do I do that? And it's through tacking. So you're changing. So your journey will change directions. But as long as I keep that North Star out there, or whatever you want to call it, that end point where I'm going to go in sight, the journey I take, I'm fine with it. I can adapt. I can go. Because
Yeah.
in life, in career, look at this, you're going to have these things. You're going to have things that are out of your control. That are, how do you adapt to that, right? But still
Absolutely.
keeping the bigger picture in mind. So when as a leader, when I go into things, I've been in situations where the house was on fire, basically, an account we took over as a big one. And I said, okay, look, guys, it's not really my job to fix this, but I'm going to sort of coordinate everything. I'm going to keep us all
Yeah.
focused on what the end goal was, how we're going to get there, and coordinate the other people on that. So it's calming to people. That's sort of my style of doing that. And there's going to be
Yeah.
some humor in there. There's going to be some, hey, we'll get through this. And a lot's like the Ironman when I went through. That's more of a mental battle than it is physical battle. If you can get to the starting line healthy, it's like, there was a part of the Ironman where I wanted to quit. I'm like, I paid like $800 for this, and I'm like, why did I
Really?
do this to torture myself?
Oh, wow.
To
I
be
didn't
miserable
realize
for
you paid
16
to be in
hours.
it. Yeah.
Yeah, so, yeah, this is 16. No, I actually could be on a couch drinking a beverage or something like that.
I
And,
paid
and
this money to do this.
yeah, your bully starts saying, "Hey, you're an old fat guy. You did pretty good getting this far. You should just quit." So again, I think through the Ironman training and the stuff like that, it all sort of proved that the mind again. It's the controlling factor of everything that's around you, and
Yeah.
how do you train it or work with it to come up with the best outcome?
I like that. And that's so powerful, and here in the Scared So What podcast and
Hmm.
in my business and our practice, we
Hmm.
focus on personal change.
Right.
How do you actually champion people to actually stop and look at themselves through
Yeah.
critical reflection, right? Break down the change and then make a decision. We want you to get out of fear, stress, worry, and anxiety and assumption and make an information-based decision. But then more
Hmm.
importantly, so what? And what I'm hearing from you is it sounds to me, like you are utilizing storytelling as a way to connect with personal change
Hmm.
and be able to manage that for yourselves as well too. So as a leader, you do coaching as well too. How do you pull that out of people? How do you pull that deep personal connection?
Yeah, I have to get them to sort of do that reflection point on that. Tell me how we got there. And there's a lot of
Yeah,
us do questions. It's like same thing I do when I'm a sales process is I want to find out as much about them and where they're at as I possibly can.
yeah,
Because then what I will do is I'll start creating a story, more positive narrative or something like that, using their words, using similar situations and stuff to that to try to help give them a seed to start their own story to get out of it, right? So I'll
yeah,
start helping writing. Here's the introduction. Here's where you're at, because that's the part that starts stimulating the different parts of the brain. This goes back to the TEDx talk, where the brain is sort of wired to, if I can put in a visual cue, if I can put in an emotional cue, you probably still have songs that you had from your youth that when you hear it, you
hmm
can vividly remember that where you had that particular moment,
yeah,
right? It comes back and because I've got an audio piece. I'm playing the soundtrack in my head. I've got the
mhm,
visual piece of where I was at, and the emotional piece. Again, emotion is the strong drive in a buying decision. 95% of the thing is emotion. You will sort of sort through things, but at the
yeah,
end of the day, it's an emotional buy. And if I can attach their emotion to sort of this journey out of it, then we have a way to go do that. But it's all about listening and learning from them where they're at. I do a little bit of my own stalking on the back end when I do that about the any company or whatever. What's the industry? What are the problems they have? What are and then if you get to the individual, then a little bit more about that. That's more of a personal conversation. But if you can't start it where they currently are,
yeah.
because I've hired coaches and stuff that tried to start where I wasn't, and I'm like, okay, this is not going to work, right? And
Well,
I didn't have much success
especially when
with
it's
it.
about them, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. Here's my success here. Well, I don't really care about that, right? I want to know how I can be successful and how I can do these things. And so I try to start with that, and then we build conversations from there. So it's a journey. There's no quick way out of it. But once you see them start again, they're starting recognizing their own inner bully, and like I said, that they're scared to do something. They want to change, but they're scared.
yeah.
And then getting them to realize that so what moment, as you phrase it, is and the so what is okay. I'm painting a better picture. There's what's the best that can happen,
Yes,
right?
exactly. Love
Exactly.
that.
So much like
And
that.
that's the coaching aspect of it.
Yeah.
I love what you're saying, Doug, because this is how when I created Scared So What for my sales teams, I didn't realize that it would be more impactful for people outside of sales, but that was just a benefit. But I mean, we all experience change. But what I found in my sales research through the master's and the doctorate was, wait a minute, there's an aha moment. the actual process of selling
Hmm.
is an enforced change on the customer.
Hmm.
Think about that. And what you've just eloquently described is if I come in and I actually want to sell you my product, sell, right? It's all about me
Hmm.
and my successes, etc. I'm not bringing my customer in on the journey. So there's no
Hmm.
opportunity for co-collaboration,
Right.
co-creation, and you're not recognizing that this is a change,
Hmm.
which is why I created Scared So What, so that if we could teach individuals how to manage change for themselves, then all of a sudden
Hmm.
when they're in that sales cycle, they realize that, wait a minute, what I'm doing is a change for these people.
Hmm.
And I
Hmm.
need to bring them in on the conversation, which is what you're doing brilliantly with
Yeah.
storytelling. Yeah, I love
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. You're so spot on. Any sale of a new thing creates a new journey and change.
Yeah,
You're not, very few times do you buy something just to keep up the consistency. Now, I may buy a same brand of shirt because I like the way
yeah,
it fits, but the
exactly.
new shirt gives me a new journey about, something about that. The shirt I got on today, you can't see it, but it's got the state of Texas. It's got a golf and two golf clubs, a wedge and a putter. So,
Nice. That's
but it's
good.
like, okay, yeah, I like golf. And it's Texas. I'm a Texan, so I always have to carry that with me.
There you go. You got to represent where you're from. I get it. I completely understand it. And you know what? Within sales, and even for sales leaders, I have some sales leaders say, "Why do I need to know about change management and organizational change? And what do you want me getting this fluffy stuff with people and personal change?" Well, your salespeople are change makers, and
Yeah.
if you don't involve your customer in on the change decision or the change
Hmm.
discussion, then guess what? You're just a tacky salesperson, and you're not
Yeah.
achieving it.
Yeah. You're gonna the person's not gonna when you sell it to them. You may get them to have change, but they don't understand necessarily. So yeah, how do you coach them into selling that inside? Because there's a lot of times we've sold things like when I was at Microsoft, people would buy this whole licensing thing of stuff that they would never use.
Yeah,
And
so
it's
true.
like, for me, that was heartbreaking because you're not taking full advantage of what you've bought. But a lot of it was just too much change for people, and they didn't understand that. I've seen a lot of things fail because they didn't, they couldn't paint that picture with change
Yeah.
and get them to buy in to make that decision. Yeah, well, this is going to be good for me. It's good
Hmm.
for the company, fine. That's a benefit, but it's going to be good for me.
Yeah.
And that's why. But sometimes you'll get those people again that just don't like change for whatever reason, and that's unfortunate. But spend the time on the people that are willing to adopt that.
Yeah.
Work on your strengths. They say is be aware of your weaknesses, but work on your strengths.
Well, and it's so true, and as you just rightfully just shared with us through your Microsoft example, I speak to so many people in SaaS technology sales right now, right? Selling.
Hmm.
And I ask the leadership, are your sales teams worried about today's quota?
Hmm.
I call it like a one-hit wonder, right?
Yeah.
Or are they actually going to be involved in the whole life cycle of the sales process and actually be thinking about the renewal? Because we
Hmm.
have so much time to sell one software and we
Yeah.
got it, we're done, and we're finished. But then all of a sudden, why is nobody using it? And you said it,
Yeah.
nobody's
Yeah.
engaging with it. They're not adopting it, embracing it, etc. So it's
Hmm.
that change mechanism. And what kind of a
Yeah.
salesperson do you want to be?
And there are the two types of salesperson. You've got the hunter and killer, which like that
Hmm.
first area with what's my quota today, and can I kill that number? Do I get to go to the
Exactly.
club?
Yeah. Yeah, I did
Or
it.
is it more of the farmer that says, okay, look, we're going to land this thing, we're going to get this, and I'm not going to sell you everything, and I'll tell him that because, or if you, I won't. The platform we have does a lot of stuff,
Yeah.
and it's like overwhelmed with all the stuff. And so, well, let's focus on a few things here that you want to do. I wouldn't sell you everything that we have because it's not right. You couldn't adopt it all. You get frustrated and quit.
For you. Good for you. I love
How do
that.
you? And I've always done this. And how do we start with this,
Yeah.
and then we grow from there? But you've got to stay engaged. You got to keep telling a story about these new things. So the journey's got to change a little bit. We can't keep going back to the same cabin, year after year for a vacation or whatever. It gets old after a
Yeah.
bit.
Yeah.
Um, and you start looking for a new cabin, right? So let's keep this going. Hey, well, here's the cabin. Now we're going to upgrade the cabin. Oh, by the way, now you get a boat dock, and you got the so
Hmm.
if you keep iterating on the story and reflecting back on, hey, look, I like to remind people, remember where we were 3 years ago,
Yeah.
and you
Yeah.
were
Right.
this.
Look at our
Reattach them
journey.
to the emotion of why they originally bought this to go on, and let's measure where we're at, sort of on that tacking back to our lighthouse across the lake there. How are we doing on
Yeah.
that journey? Are we still going? And the thing about it is the way technology changes today. A 5-year roadmap used to be pretty predictable. Microsoft's going to release, 1 or 2 different releases. Intel's got new chipsets. That was predictable. It was a
Yeah, not
project.
anymore. Yeah.
Yeah, now software as a service changed everything to a process. So
Yeah.
what's true today may not be true tomorrow. There may be something better. And rather than switching platforms or companies, again, as a company, we need to be developing products that sort of evolve as well that can help our, let's build this house a layer at a time.
Yeah.
And it's just important to stay in. Again, reminding them of where they started from the journey is always great. Because I look back and I tell Simon, I said, look where you told me I couldn't do this 10 years ago, and look where I'm at today.
Exactly. Time goes by too fast.
It does. It does. So again, it excites me to be, and I inside, I've been around the sun several times, let's just say. But inside, I'm still got that 12 or 13-year-old kid that likes to play around with these new things that go on. So I get excited every day about, okay, what new thing can I learn? I still haven't, TikTok, I still haven't mastered that. But, some things I just have to sort of let go, right?
It's too addicting.
Yeah.
It's too addicting. Well, listen, tell me, you've got an amazing best-selling book out there called Voice Your Vibe, The Power of Authentic Connection.
That is one. I'm co-author of 3 books. So
are you?
Yeah, 3
tell me
books.
more.
So the first one was Rattled Awake. And again, these I've got a co-author. The other authors in there are so great and powerful. And the first one I have is Rattled Awake, which is about that aha moment where you just like, I've got to make that shift. You make that connection, right? So you make the thing, I need to change. So you've adopted that. And it tells a story of some corporate life and stuff. Again, it's not as dramatic as some of the others, which they had drug problems. And again, I can't compare myself to others on that. It's like, okay, this is my journey. And to be honest, there's a lot more people out there that are on my journey that haven't had any of that near-death stuff that's, I guess you'd call average or normal, that can relate to this. And, lucky, right. They need help getting out that they do have a story to tell, regardless of what it is. And the second one was actually in Tara's book. I talked a little about, so she had me in there. And
you were in Tara's books. No wonder. Here I am preaching to the choir. You know who she is.
I wanted to play that down. I mean, she's a fantastic person with that. And if you read her story and she can still be grateful off all the stuff that happened to her. It's like, wow, okay, that gives you a pathway to do that. And then, so I wrote a chapter in that. It was about telling stories and stuff. Is more about the TEDx thing going on that way. Yeah. And then the Voice Your Vibe. I've known Brian Schulman for many years on LinkedIn. He was one of my original that told me I did have a story. I didn't when I first got on. It was at Microsoft, and I was trying to expand into social, and I wanted to have bigger presence. And I got I talked to Brian. I said, look, I don't really have a story. He's again getting back to that thing. I don't have a story to tell. I'm not remarkable. And as I talked to him, he said, look, you got several stories to tell. You got the Ironman story. You've got the sales story. You've got the grandfather story that goes on. And it dawned on me, sometimes you have to have people, it's like Rafiki in there. Sometimes you have to like get you smacked with a stick to get your attention back.
Exactly. I know. I just saw that. Exactly. Because I'm sitting here listening to you, and you do have you're on the show. You have so much to say. You do have experiences to say.
So that's what that's about. Now I am writing my own book here, my solo one, and it's about the working title, sort of sell by story, and it's a play off the sell by date. And this gets back to the demos that suck. I see too many pitches out there and stuff that should have been thrown in the waste bin or well past their sell by date anymore, right?
So true.
and so it's a play off that. And it's about. There's a lot of stuff. There's a lot of good books about being a systems engineer. So it's really aimed towards that technical sales audience, which just about all companies sell technology now. So it got broader than that. But it's about how do you make that demo that doesn't suck? How do you tell that story? And it's about, again, connecting with your prospect, getting in. It's the things I've talked about during this podcast. Connecting with them where they are, starting the story where they are, using the words that they use. And then taking the journey from there. So it's a lot about that. It's artist, because there's nobody that's really done a lot of really good job of the art of storytelling from that perspective.
So true.
And there are a couple out there, but to me they're kind of dry in there. So I'm trying to connect with the fun nerds.
Good for you. No, I think it's gonna be amazing. I can't wait to see that book as well too. That'll be fantastic. And I hope you and I stay together so that we can continue to share that.
I think so.
I love the storytelling of it. And I shared with you, I think when we first started talking, the scientific discussion about
Yeah.
that, which is narrative hermeneutics. And you're like, what
Yes.
the hell? That's a
What
heavy word, and
hermeneutics?
it
How do you
is.
spell that?
Exactly. Well, that's hard. I messed that up a lot. But it's so amazing because what you're doing is an ancient art form. And narrative hermeneutics goes all the way back. You can trace that back to Zeus, Apollo, all of
Mhm,
those ancient times, to when who had the authority to actually tell the story of the
mhm,
gods to the lay people. And that's been going on throughout years, all the way through to from biblical times. Who's going to translate the Bible? Who's going to
mhm,
translate the story, the narratives, etc. Through sales. You think
mhm,
the old Chinese silk roads, the routes that went around. How do
mhm.
we tell the stories of where things came from? You're practicing something that not very many people have the ability and the keen ability and to process and do. And you do have an amazing story to tell. So
Well, thank you. I believe we're all put here with a unique set of talents.
yeah,
How we sort of put it together is up to us
that's so
and do
true.
that. And I've had to have people again take out the Rafiki stick on occasion. My wife has done a really good job of that to silence the inner bully and give me point me in a little direction. We need to
Yeah.
do a little course change because I'm horrible at reflecting at what I do well. Um, I just I don't know why. I guess this may be Simon or whatever. I don't because I live with myself 24/7, 365, and there's a lot of people that way. To me, it's not remarkable because I've been on this journey and I'm around myself all the time. I just think everybody can do it.
Yeah.
All right. Because that's what I do. And it's just sort of, I don't have to think about it. It's one of those unconscious, competent things
Yeah.
that, like a gifted athlete, they focus on these very small things, but but there's also other people that could be that gifted that don't focus on it and they never realize their potential.
Well, and
So,
that's so powerful. And what we need from you as well too. You think of the people that you're serving in technology, etc., who don't have the ability at the moment to
mhm,
find their voice of who they are. And if you can be that impetus that actually helps them to pull it out, you've
mhm.
transformed lives. That's
Yeah, and
powerful.
that's the goal at the end of the day is try to leave the place. Look, it's sort of passe, but leave the place better than when I found it
I
when I
think you're
came
doing
in.
that.
So,
I think you're absolutely doing that. Well, listen, we're all the way to the end of our show already, but as I ask the same question to everybody who's on, what is one thing of advice you'd like to give out to people about change, coaching, leadership, or
mhm.
just life?
It sort of fits on when the inner bully starts talking. Get in touch with your inner bully
Hmm.
and ask that question of, where's the receipts, or think about it.
Yeah.
What's the best that can happen? So yeah, what's the worst going to happen is going to pop into mind. But anytime that comes into mind, it's a reminder. Well, what's the best thing that can happen? Let's look at that side of the
Yeah.
equation. Because I think from there on, you'll have a lot more success and you'll be a lot happier and you won't be scared anymore.
That's so true. You know what? And if we live that, if we live in your truth, what you're teaching us, and it doesn't go work, the worst thing that can happen is we can just blame Doug.
Yep, there you go. Blame me. That's a funny story that comes from that. Was I had I have a mentor, and every time I'll talk to him about something about that, he'll come up with a new business idea, and so
Uh,
he doesn't use the head. I blame Doug for this new business because, and it's not. Maybe I'm on a mission to change the word of blame to a good thing. Sort of like thongs used to mean something
yeah,
else. It used to be things you put on your feet, which are flip
that's
flops, and now
true.
it's something else.
Now it's
So
something
I'm trying
else.
to
Yeah,
change the word
exactly.
of that. I like
Exactly.
tilting at windmills, so let's change the meaning of the word blame.
That's so funny. I love that. Well, listen, Doug, thanks for coming on the show. I really
Thanks
appreciate
for
having
having
you
me.
on with us. And for all of you listening, if you'd like to learn more about Doug or connect with him, follow along on LinkedIn, YouTube, and all of his other socials. I'm going to put a list here. I've got his website. He is a speaker. So if you want to hire Doug and bring him on to your business, your organization, I'll give the link so you can book him as well, too. Doug, it's been amazing to have you on board. What's the last word you want to share?
I've just got gratitude for having me on, Grant. Thanks a lot.
Gratitude. Tara will enjoy that. Thank you so much, Doug. We'll see you soon, okay?
Yeah, bye.
Thanks for joining us here on the Scared So What podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Grant Van Ulbrich. If you found any of this information insightful, well, give us a like and follow along. Make sure that you tune in each week for more episodes as we talk further about what is personal change, how do you manage it with Scared So what about coaching, and also leadership, and how all three of these tie together. If you'd like to learn more, then go to our website at www.scaredsowhat.com. Thanks so much for listening, and I hope that you come back soon.